Do you want to do more than follow orders? Think outside of the box and manifest your dreams? Then you've come to the right show. Welcome to the award-winning podcast, Holding Down the Fort by U.S. VetWealth. I'm your host, Jen Amos, a Gold Star daughter, veteran spouse, and entrepreneur. For Season 8, we continue our wonderful partnership with the Rosie Network to highlight motivational stories of personal growth, financial awareness, and autonomy in our military community. We're also excited to showcase our partnership with Blue Water Advisors. Well, we have a lot in store for you this season, so let's get started. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode here at Holding Down the Fort by U.S. VetWealth in partnership with the Rosie Network and Blue Water Advisors. Takes a village. Takes a village. If you've been following me along, I've been stressing that a lot. It takes a village to do all of this. Let me go ahead and start with the question of the day here because it's Monday. And I think, in spirit of Motivational Monday, I want to give you a question to reflect on. So here it is. Reflecting on past traumas, how have you navigated your path to healing? And what strategies have you found most effective? For Candice Elizabeth, her healing process includes her work as an energy healer and valuing the importance of self-love and self-understanding. This already feels like a heartwarming conversation, and I can attest to this because I was part of it. All right, Candice believes that we can use our difficult experiences to practice self-forgiveness, reshape our perceptions of love, and be of benefit to others. She shares her transformative journey into energy healing and becoming a Reiki practitioner amidst the unique challenges of military life. Moving to California and transitioning into an empty nester, Candice delved deeper into personal growth and helping others navigate their paths to healing. Her story is a testament to the power of resilience, continuous learning, and the profound impact of small changes. Listen to Candice's dedication to educating others on energy healing and her journey of self-discovery and recovery from trauma, illuminating the endless possibilities for transformation and renewal. Candice, it was a pleasure having you on our show. For our listeners or viewers, because this is available on YouTube, which you can get the direct link in the show notes of this episode. If you want to get a hold of Candice as you are listening to this conversation, go ahead and check out the show notes of this episode available in your preferred podcasting platform. If you want to visit our website instead, go to holdingdownthefortpodcast.com, do a search of episode 190. There's a search bar on the top right. Just plug in 190 and Candice's episode will pop up and you'll be able to get her contact information, her website, her social media, all this stuff to get a hold of her. So once again, I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Candice on healing, growing, and transformation through energy work. Thanks again, Candice, for joining me. To our listeners, enjoy listening and or watching. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode here at Holding Down the Fort. I am so excited to be bringing on our guest today. She is a holistic wellness educator, Candice Elizabeth. Candice, welcome to the show.
Hi, so great to be here today. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so excited because I did my online stalking as most podcast hosts do before they interview someone. And the big thing that what I found of you is just this healing energy, like through the screen of my computer. So I'm just very excited to dive into a conversation today, to hear your story, hear why you do what you do and all that stuff. So once again, just thanks for joining me on the show.
Well, thank you so much for stalking me too.
You're welcome. If people don't want to be stalked, just don't put stuff online. I'm just kidding. But, in this case, it's like for business. So obviously I only looked up like what was publicly available just for the record in case anyone's like, okay.
Outside my window, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Candice, for people that are getting to know you for the first time, can you just give us a quick snapshot of your life? What keeps you busy and or excited about life nowadays?
Yeah, so we PCS'd here in June of this year to California. So first time here. This is a 2-year assignment. So really life has looked so different this year in particular because my last out of my 3 children graduated. So first time empty nester. I mean, we have 2 dogs, but So life just looks different in general, new area, new everything. And really just working on, I developed a course for Reiki level 1 and really like stay motivated to help people. This is the season where I get to be more available. So energetically, it's like you get to be a part of making lives change. And that's really what drives me these days is, there's so many transformations that I see. And some of them are really just like those small things that make such a big lasting impact. And just continuing to learn. I am a life learner. In fact, I have 2 different courses that I'm working through right now, thanks to Blue Star Families, actually. And so I'm like always doing something to expand. Like, I feel like that's what gets me going.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, congratulations on being an empty nester. What an accomplishment. I imagine this is a major adjustment for you to have all this extra time in your hands.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's like, well, and especially being in a new area, like trying to meet new people. And like, I don't know if you've been to California, but traffic is insane here.
Yeah.
It's like a whole different life. We came from the DC area, and prior to that, it was Washington State. So very different vibes everywhere.
Yeah.
But in general, like it's definitely been a beautiful adjustment.
I'm actually surprised hearing you say that you came from DC and like California as an adjustment in regards to traffic, because I feel like DC is crazy with traffic too, right?
It is. Luckily, we lived outside of DC, so we didn't deal with like the actual DC traffic. But
Yeah. California, at least in Southern California, I lived in San Diego for 20 years before moving to the East Coast. So I feel like we switched places in a way. But it's like interesting because in, Southern California, I just feel like it's traffic galore, like every direction. And it's like a commuter community, I feel like, because people like to live out in the suburbs and then they, drive 40, 50 minutes to get to their jobs. And it's just,
they're like, with it.
Yeah. And I feel like they're always like expanding the freeways, but it's like never enough. And it's just really crazy. But yeah, I mean, it sounds to me that, being an empty nester and being in California for the first time, it almost sounds like you are starting with like a clean slate, like you're starting a whole new chapter. And therefore, it makes sense like why you're able to put more time into your work and especially in this Reiki level 1 course.
Yes. Well, and that's kind of what it feels like. And I feel like it's almost that way with every PCS. I feel like you get the opportunity to really dive into the next level or next version of yourself, the next evolution. And with this one in particular, everything really started in Virginia for me. And so being able to like transition here and then just continue learning and expanding my knowledge. And I'm somebody who loves to educate people. And so I knew that the next step for me would be taking on more of the education behind energy healing.
Yeah.
I work with clients, and my goal is to help them get into that level 1 and really have their own ownership over their healing, because I think that that's what makes the true difference. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of educating, for people that are hearing about Reiki for the first time, or let's say they have assumptions about Reiki, tell us from your experience and your knowledge and expertise, like what is Reiki?
Yeah. So, it's everybody thinks that it's a religion, which it's not. It's actually a spiritual healing practice. It originated in Japan and traveled over this way in the 80s. And essentially, if I could describe it, it would be like having a warm hug during the session. Like for me, channeling the energy, you channel it from so let me just back up. We all have life force energy. So we all carry energy. We all resonate energy. And just, we are all interconnected. And when we're out of alignment, you can feel it. Your energy is different. You might have different thought patterns or behaviors. And so what Reiki aims to do is help bring that support and balance into like our chakra system, into our body, so that we can alleviate these diseases that can manifest whenever we're not energetically balanced. And so Reiki to me, like I said, when I experience it, it's like having this golden light just shine right through your body. And it feels like you have this love and support that it's almost indescribable. And it's mentioned in many religious texts as like the healing hands and healing energy. So they're all very interconnected. And so anybody that's hesitant, I've worked with people from all different kind of religious backgrounds that experience the same healing, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think that maybe in Western society, we have to see it to believe it in a way. But like with Reiki, with something like Reiki and Eastern medicine, it's more, it's intangible, I feel like. And so I imagine a lot of your work is about educating the intrinsic value of doing something like this.
It really is. And like, that's the beautiful part, especially for my clients who are virtual. The first time you do a virtual session, it's like mind blowing because you don't anticipate it to work. I promise you, I was like very skeptical myself. I was like, there's no way, like what in the heck? But it's crazy because we are so interconnected that energy is transferable. And so, yes, a lot of it is explaining. And that's what I do whenever I take on a client. I make sure first that they understand what it is, because a lot of people associate it with just feeling at peace and feeling at ease. And while, yes, you will feel much lighter, better, and overall supported, what happens is anything that's been stagnant or like hidden away will tend to surface, and it's surfacing at the moment that you're ready to heal it. But often it's still scary or still hot. And so in energy healing sessions, we are supporting the body, but we're also helping change the energy. And so what it can do is think about it like this. Like when you're so used to doing the same things over and over and over, when you add a new habit in, it like throws your brain off, right? Same thing with energy. When you're so used to being in the energy resonance that you're in, when you clear it out, you can kind of feel off balance because you're like, whoa, I actually like feel good. And I don't even know what that means to me. So it's a lot about relearning about the self.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that you have personal experience with Reiki, and I imagine that like your epiphany and your experience, it probably came from something that led to that. And I know that, once upon a time, Candice was not a military spouse. And so tell me a little bit about, your history, really the catalyst that brought you on this journey.
Yeah. So prior to meeting my husband, I was actually a single parent for a really, really long time. And I was 19 when I had my first child and 21 by the time I had 3. And when I divorced their father, it was a big decision. I was young and didn't know what to do. And moved back in with family, did the whole thing. And all the time, I was still so struggling with mental health. And back then, they really didn't talk about like postpartum depression. And like when I go back and visit it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had 3 children by the time I was 21. That's being pregnant 3 times within 4 years. Like, like my hormones were been all over the place. And top it up, I was still young. So hormones are still off the place. So all this abundance. And I grew up with a family who was very much like, we don't talk about it. We just get through it. And so it's such a long time hiding how I felt and like living with this depression and anxiety. Because, when you're trying to support 3 kids and you're barely making it, like you're just, you want to not give up, but you want things to get better. And so I lived with that for such a long time. And then I met my former late ex-spouse who was very abusive. He was very manipulative, domestic violence definitely lived through that. It was a very challenging time. It's like having your identity completely stripped away and then having to reconfigure the pieces later is what I experienced. I say late because he did take his own life. It was 2 years after we got divorced and he did end his life. And it was a shock, but it was also like I knew the pain he was living with. And watching PTSD firsthand, he was a paramedic firefighter for a long time. And so watching that, it was very eye-opening, but it was like I was trying to save him, even though I didn't have the capability. Yeah. And so, once I finally got cleared of that situation, it was that moment where, and my kids were with my grandmother at the time, when I just hit a very low. I just hit this rock bottom low where I was just like, I just physically cannot take anymore. And I wanted to make life better and I wanted to do these things, but I didn't quite know how. And one night I attempted to take my life, and it was a severe, I woke up in the hospital with a direct line to my heart for dialysis. Wow. And I'm like strapped to a bed. I have no idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. And it was in that moment that I was like, I can't do this. Like, I have kids. And like, of course I had the guilt and like all the things. And yet I knew that I didn't ever want to be back in that spot. And it was in that moment, like I stayed at the hospital for a couple of days and I saw Joyce Meyer's book. And I don't remember which one it was. I think it was like a daily devotional, but I just saw her book. And then I ended up reading Battlefield of the Mind, which super phenomenal book. She's an amazing author and speaker and all the things. But it was like, there was just this theme around getting better and like in God to take care of me. And I like broke down. I spoke to a chaplain there and I was like, look, I am like struggling. And I just like word vomited everything that was going on. Like, oh my gosh, no. Especially very understanding and made me feel at peace with my decision to leave the situation I was in and everything. Like, gave me a lot of comfort because she had told me, I was like, well, I'm a Christian and like, I don't believe in divorce and like, I've already been divorced and like, I can't do this again. And she's like, honey, let me tell you, the moment that he hurt you physically, emotionally, all the things is the moment he broke his commandment. And it was like the light bulb went off and I was like, okay, I'm okay. I can do this. And so it was after that, I left the hospital, got home, and I sat down. And I was like, okay, I want this change, this change, and I'm going to do this. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to start praying. And I started praying. I started journaling and I started writing out affirmations like a million times. And it was like, I want this change. I'm doing this change. I am this change. And I would just, like, really reinforce that I was doing this. And it took me about like a couple of weeks to really get recentered. I did seek out counseling and a therapist and like got things in motion to where I could feel like a human again. And spent the next year really working on finding myself. And it was such a challenge. Like I didn't know who I was anymore. But it was also, and when I look back now, I can see that I might not have ever known who I was because all I had ever identified was daughter, then mother, and then wife. And so I didn't have that time to develop the self, which is what normal people do in their early. And so for me, it was just about rebuilding and re-understanding who I am. And that's where it led me into my healing journey, which would take me, I've been working on myself for almost 10 years. So it's been a while. But that's the thing, is that people always think that healing is so instant, and it's not. You will heal one aspect of a situation to find that there's more. And that's the thing that I believe that God gives us, is that ability to heal when we're ready in ways that we're ready. And that looks different for everyone. Sometimes people can handle like all the things or like a big bunch. And sometimes it's like, really, we're just going to take this one step at a time and make sure that you feel that peace and that ability to clean out what is no longer serving you.
Yeah.
That's what led me to everything that I do now.
Amazing. What a story. I was just thinking about like, wow, like young Candice like had no room for self-exploration at all. Like at all, from having your 3 kids to, being with that partner to the point where you attempted to take your life. And it really took an event like that for you to do the performative act of journaling every day. And even if you didn't believe in it, like you said, it took you weeks because, one thing that I've learned about trauma healing is that sometimes you just have to act the healing practice initially before you start to internalize it. And so for a while, I even think about my own journey. And for a while, it's like you're just doing the performative act of getting healthier and doing things to take care of yourself. And then one day it's like, wow, I have feelings again, like I'm happy. Or it's not stemmed in some kind of trauma. It's not a feeling I can be skeptical of. It's like a new plant that sprouted. And it's a new plant that I don't understand because it's new and it's healthy and it's life, it's purpose, it's love. But it takes so long to really like, I'm thinking about farming right now, and I don't know what you call it, but how they like redo the soil. Like,
Yeah, yes.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I don't know the phrase. Someone's going to tell us later.
Yeah.
What is it?
Regenerative agriculture or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you add new like, fertilizer. It's like you kind of like have to redo the soil and plant new seeds. And it's like the act of it is labor intensive. It's exhausting. It's, from first glance, it's like, how am I going to like turn this barren, burnt down field into a garden, into like a farm? And so I feel like that's when I think about your story, I imagine like, like farming. I imagine like the seasons changing to the point where, you're reaping what you sowed in all those years of like working on yourself. And now like there's so much green, there's so much life, so much color, and you get to share that with other people. And it smells good, like good produce, like smells good and just life to it. And so that was kind of going through my mind, like hearing your story and how you got to where you are today. And I think that whole journey, I can only imagine. And based on like the reviews I've read about you with your clients, like your clients can feel that energy. They can feel the energy. They can feel like you yourself have healed as much as you can at this point, because we're always healing. Healing is, it's a verb. It's something that's actively happening.
Yes.
And can always happen. Just like exercising. You can't just go to the gym once and like, boom, you got, you have toned muscles. And so I just love that journey and where you're at today. So I hope that you give yourself flowers in a way. And I hope that you've taken time to, I mean, I know you have, because this is all about self-empowerment and awareness and all that, but, really just recognizing like where you're at today. And thus, you're doing God's work in a sense where you're serving those who maybe have gone through a similar path as you or have gone through similar traumas as you. And I'm sure that also plays into your healing experience.
It really does. And like one of the biggest things that I first talk with clients with, because most of my clients, so with Reiki, you can either lay your hands on or go over, or of course virtual, you're just virtual. And because I work with so many trauma patients, I typically will not even place hands, on them, because it's like a matter of respect and like trust, and you don't need to in order to heal. One of the very first things that we talk about, and I ask them, is what does love mean to you? Have you ever defined it for yourself? Because most of the time we have interpreted love based on our childhood experiences leading into our adolescence, then relationships. And usually it's those first formative years. Unfortunately, parents do the best we can. But because of that, we formulate what love looks like from outward perspective. And so it's almost a sense of, how can I love myself if I don't know how I identify that or define that for me? And it kind of puts people in that like back seat where they're like, whoa, I have never thought about this before. And so we really work on those layers of identifying, okay, this is where you're at. Now let's think about this way. Because a lot of the work is done through the healing, but then there's that when things come forward, we discuss. And I always recommend, any of the clients that I work with are usually in therapy as well. It goes great with other therapies. But, it's really about defining what that looks like for you. And even me as a healer, just like storms happen, you can't protect your crop from everything. There are things happen in my life too. And I'm just better equipped to deal with it now versus before. It doesn't mean that I don't experience moments of like feeling depression or having anxiety, but I do know how to navigate it much easier. I mean, doesn't mean perfect, right? But that's another lesson, is even someone that has studied all the things and does all the things can still experience those moments. It's just about being able to move through it.
Yeah. I think it's important to recognize the humanity in us. Like, we're never going to be fully healed. We're never going to be like, we're never going to quote unquote make it in a way.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing journey because like once you hit a certain milestone, well, now that may surface other issues, like I think nowadays, for example, I'm in a place in my life where I feel like I'm planting roots, I'm planting local community. And I'm now at a place where like a lot of the work I've done in the recent years have been primarily online. And so it's great because I can just close my laptop, I can call it a day. But like now that I have like a local community, I have people saying like, hey, can you come over? Or, hey, I need help at something. And it's funny because it's like for a long time, I've had to like redefine what community meant to me. And now that I have it, I'm like in this new layer of like, oh, like people need me. And it's like, and what I'm saying is like, it's like, every time you hit a milestone, there's new opportunities that come up. And that's what I'm saying about like how like we will always be on this like healing journey, this growth journey. And I think it's a beautiful thing because we get to like, I know that you've lived many different lifetimes at this point. It's like we all get to do that in our own way. We all have different seasons, different chapters of our life. And, why not go through that healing process so that we can experience those different versions of ourselves? Like I'm excited to see who I may become 5, 10, 20 years from now. It may not be who I am now. And I'm excited for that. And I don't want to hold on to anything like trauma related that's going to hold me back from discovering who I could be in the future.
Right. And there's a way that we can use our experience. And like, it's very sensitive to say these kind of things. So please, anybody listening, just know that I do take this very like to heart and serious. But when we experience really hard moments, and I've been through some pretty intense things. And, at the time I wouldn't have probably, been okay to know that I could use it in the future. But truly, we have the choice to use whatever we've gone through to benefit someone else. Even if it was hard for us in that moment, think about the life change it can make for someone else when we're at that point in our healing journey. It doesn't mean we have to do it today, right? But in the future, when you're ready, when you're called, when like you see that person that's like 4 steps behind you and you're like, no, you got this. I believe in you. Like, let me hold space for you. And that's how we can allow these things to fade into the past with a renewed state of being, meaning like we're able to really take whatever that lesson is and turn it into something else. And that's the only way I feel that we can experience true freedom from our trauma is by first, like sitting with the reality of it, which is the hardest part, is like the acknowledgement piece, because a lot of us don't want to revisit or think about it again. It's like, oh, no, I'm good. But in reality, like the best thing we can do for ourselves is to sit with that, feel the emotions, and really like let the feelings feel, and then say, okay, now what is next? Like, where am I going to go from here? Because it only stays with us if we allow it to, in the heaviness of it, as long as we hold on to it in that way. And that's where like energy work really comes in to support you as you're navigating forward so that you can experience those things and really clean out the emotional, I would say what we haven't worked through, the things that we haven't worked through, be able to work through those things and then be able to like finally move forward. Because that's the best feeling, is to be like, I've been through like all these crazy things, but like, I don't feel the heaviness of them today that I did 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I get that choice and that ability to move forward.
Yeah. I have to ask you, why, in your personal experience and observation and working with clients, like, why do we stay stuck? Is it because we don't have the tools, we don't have the knowledge, where we don't realize we can move forward? Like, what have you come to find makes us not want to look back, want to look back at those traumas, or even, especially work through them?
A lot of it has to do with worthiness. I feel that, depending on what the circumstance was or what your childhood upbringing was, it really shaped how you feel about yourself. And sometimes we can hold on to those experiences because it's all we know of ourselves. And it's how we've identified with ourselves. Like, oh, this is just who I am. And the trauma becomes who we are versus us separating and realizing that, no, there's just some bad people out there that do really bad things. And we are not that. We are this person that is worthy to be in a better state of being. And part of it is, not understanding how the body holds on to experiences. So everything is an imprint in our life. no matter what age we are. And energy resonates. So anytime we have not worked through something, they call it ending the cycle for a reason, because you cycle through the same circumstances over and over and over again in your life. It may look different. So let's say, I'll just give an example. Let's say that, your parent really didn't allow you to be creative. And so you kind of felt as if your personal power was shut down. So then in your later life, you have this desire, but you end up taking the job that cuts off your creativity. Or you end up with a partner who cuts off your creativity. So it can look different, but it still presents the same cycle. And so, being able to recognize and identify our cycles is like the very first step. Once you're able to go, oh my gosh, like I do this, I hang out with this person, I've done that. And it like starts making sense. You're like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense why I'm the way I am. And that's really what gets us out of that unstuck, is being able to sit with ourselves and be like, okay, I just need to like analyze as much as I can about myself. There've been many meditations that I've gone into where I just started like sobbing, and I'm like, why am I crying? And it's because I like had an epiphany moment and I connected a dot, and it was like the body's way of getting the energy out and saying, okay, I'm like healing through this. I might still have work to do on this, but at least I'm able to be okay with it and work through it. And that's the other thing too, is a lot of times we don't feel secure enough to go through those things. So it might be like too hard to go through it in the moment, to revisit a trauma, which is completely understandable. I feel like we come to these places of healing when we are ready and energetically capable. So that is something like, and it's in layers. It happens in layers anyway. And so really being okay with acknowledgement is the biggest thing that I see with clients, is once they're okay with acknowledging, like, hey, this is like how I felt in childhood or how I felt in this circumstance, then we're able to say, okay, now let's step outside of it and let's like really revisit. Did you really know what your parents were going through? Like, did they talk openly about like life? Probably not. You're getting the best version of them, and that might not have been the greatest version, right? Could have been terrible. And that's where it starts, is like identifying, acknowledging, and then walking through.
Yeah, it gets me to reflect on my own healing journey. And when I was able to get to a place where I had like inner peace and self-love, I was able to look at the people who impacted my life and ask myself those questions, like, were they going through something? Were they experiencing something? And they were. But it took me, looking at myself and creating that self-awareness and acknowledgement of my traumas to like have that layer of extra awareness, I feel like, for other people who also were going through struggles. And I think that saying is so true. It goes something like, hurt people. And then also, I think the other side of that is heal people. And I think that's exactly what you do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's something that is so valuable. I feel like, we hit a certain time in our life where when we do reflect back, and especially, and I always reference childhood because it's such a formative time. We really take in our environment from the age of like birth until 4, 5, 6, 7, like about age 5, we really start stepping into who we want to be in this world. And even though we have, like I said, not enough tools yet, but we really start stepping into who we are. And like our formative years really do make such a big impact in our life, whether it was great, not so great, or terrible. And it's all situational. And it takes a really strong person to have that level of awareness of self, but awareness of others. And you get to a point where you are there to be able to say, you know what, I know that your actions were not okay, but I know that you're a hurting person. So therefore I can be okay. Yeah. And it's a way of like forgiveness without necessarily forgiveness. If somebody's not comfortable with being like, yeah, I'm okay with it. It's more of saying, I'm forgiving the situation so that I can heal. because that's how you move forward. And we can, cut people out of our lives if we need to. We can do the things and do so in a loving way with respect to where it doesn't cause harm to ourselves or them. And do that with that balance of knowing like, yep, I choose to do this for me.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing, and I think about my own journey and just like you said, learning to, I'm going to say distance myself from certain people, love them, forgive them, and create that space, create that distance. And I have found that there's nothing more healing than, at least for me, to get to that place where it's like, okay, if I continue to be exposed to this, the cycle is going to continue. And I think the best way to love all of us is to step out of that situation and, focus on healing for myself, because it's not my responsibility to heal other people. It's my responsibility to heal myself, And so, yeah, I just having this conversation, at least for me, I feel like I'm having a therapy session here. It feels very affirming is what I'm saying. Everything you're sharing and, knowing your story, knowing your journey, it reassures even myself and where I'm at today. And I hope that our listeners, they feel the same way. Hopefully, if you've been through a very, a series of traumatic experiences, or even just one, whatever it is, trauma is trauma. If you've gone through that journey of self-awareness, acknowledgement, forgiveness, and whatever you need to do to get to a place of forgiving the other person, or other, maybe it's a community of people or whatever the case, and being able to live in the present and hopefully find the blessings in that so that you could be a blessing to others. Often I like to say that it's a blessing to be a blessing.
It is. It really is. And two, we are so fortunate that we have life. And that is something that, going just back to the very basics of our essence. We are such divine beings. If we, when we pray, when we do these things that connect us with a higher source, however you choose to label, you know that you're meant for more. You know that you're loved. Even if you might not feel it in the moment, it's like you know that you are. And being able to come to that place of understanding and remembering that you are an incredible person that has such amazing energy, potential, all the things. It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to know that even though we have all these things going on in the world and it can get us down, think about if every single person thought how great they were and loved who they are, how different this world would be.
Yeah.
Because how can you hate others if you love yourself? And that's why I'm on this mission this year to teach as many people as I can how to understand their energy, how to heal their energy, and to really tap back into our higher power. We are supported in everything that we do. And I know this to be true because there have been so many times in life where I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I knew it was going to work out. And once we know that, we can make such a bigger impact in this world. And even in our community, our families, having those open conversations with our kids about how they're feeling. They're this transition of, post-COVID, which has affected so many people, so many children, just everyone. Yeah. And so we really need this next level of healing to be able to have a more foundational life, have a better firm foundation in what we know to be true about life, to know that there's so much more and time is so valuable. You never know. You never know when it's going to be your last day or your friend's last day. So why not live it in an experience that you want to be in?
Yeah. Well, amen to that. I am curious to know, you said you've been working on yourself for the last decade. I'm curious to know about your kids. I mean, I know they're all adult kids at this point. They all, you're an empty nester. In your perspective, how have they reacted to your change? Because I imagine that from being in your young 20s to where you're at now, they must have witnessed different versions of yourself throughout those years.
Exactly. And, that is one of the things that I love about the connection that I have with my kids is that, we've finally gotten to a place where we can have those real conversations because, they also lost their father. So my two prior spouses have both passed away.
Yeah.
My kid's father passed away 3 years ago. And so, they were all in their late teens or already graduated high school. So it was like a time where we could come together as a family to really talk about grief and how it's different for everyone, a depression. Because I noticed that, one of my children was going through really bad depression during COVID, and it was like really getting to him. And I was like, okay, we have to do something. We have to be proactive with this. And so I feel that they have seen the changes and they love the version of me now. Not that they didn't love me before, but they can tell I care about myself. They see me making healthy choices. I exercise, I eat healthy, drink the water, do the things. And the meditation. It was funny the first time that I did an energy healing session for my son, because he absolutely was like, whatever, this is, And then he was like, he fell asleep because that can happen. And so he was just like, but he felt it. And he was like, oh, different. Like, I didn't really, I thought you just like, I see clients come in and I just assume that whatever, placebo effect. And I was like, nope, it's real. It works. And so, they've really gotten the better version of me now. Yeah. And I feel sad sometimes when I think back to like all the things that I wish I could have done better as a parent. And I've had to give myself a lot of forgiveness for not being like what I would feel today, like the parent I would be today. And we've had a lot of talks about that. And they, allowing them to share openly about their struggles that they had during things. And, I've been a huge advocate for therapy for all of them, because I feel like therapy is for everyone. Like we all need it. And being able to support them in the ways that I wasn't supported in my mental health journey has been very valuable. And like, they're all doing really well right now. Like all of them, they actually all moved back to Texas. So I grew up in Texas, and it's amazing because especially my son, he kept in touch with so many people from his like childhood, from moved to Washington to Virginia. And so like when he moved back to Texas, he like had this network of friends and, felt like he was lively again because, COVID, he being at home all the time. And he spent most of his high school career at home, so.
Wow.
Well, because in Washington State, it's 10th grade is when you go to high school. So he was like just about to get there, and then COVID happened. So,
oh my goodness. Yeah. My heart goes out to all the students who, missed out on their prom or missed out on their first or second year of college. Like, I can only imagine like what that experience was like, because I think about how impressionable I was in high school and in college because of the social interactions I had. And to do that at home, I can only imagine. So I think it sounds like it was such a healing experience for you and your kids to like talk about these things.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of scientific support that shows that we need that interaction with others. There's actually a course that I'm taking, and it's called The Science of Happiness. It's amazing. I love it. And in it, it talks about how, we value others most of the time over ourselves, but even down to studies where they give someone $5 and they say either spend it on yourself or go give it to someone else. What increases our internal happiness is actually when we do things for others, or being on the metro and having a conversation with a random stranger actually increases our happiness as much as like introverts. Like, I'm an extroverted introvert. So as much as that can be intimidating, it actually boosts your happiness, their happiness. And so we are built to be around people. So that's one of the biggest things when I worked at the yoga studio in Virginia. And one of the biggest initiatives I wanted for the studio, we were in pre-sale, so weren't quite open until the very end of us being there. But, I wanted us to be in the schools. I wanted us to share that impact because it's a tool that these kids can use to bring themselves back. When they're having an anxious moment, they have something to bring themselves back. And so, being able to really help support this next generation is one of my big goals because I've seen it firsthand. And so, definitely. But to get back, it was definitely a healing experience for us all. I think that even when it's hard to hear the things, it's much better to acknowledge them and to work through them versus just act like they're not there. And that was one of the biggest things that I always advocated for my kids, is that you can tell me exactly how you feel. like, please, like, I'm not a perfect human. And like, we need to talk through these things. And, being that I, suffered from mental health so early on, I was like 8, 9 when I started showing signs of depression.
Yeah.
So it went unnoticed for so long that I never wanted that for my kids. If I ever noticed the signs of like, them not being present or, sleeping a lot or wanting to be on like a device all the time, all these different things that can indicate there is some form of disassociation, depression, something going on.
Yeah.
And to be really aware of that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, what a discussion of, self-healing, self-discovery, and, having that open dialogue with your kids. I think that's so admirable. I think about even my own family and how I wouldn't say stoicism was a virtue, but like it just wasn't part of our family dynamic to talk about feelings, and I'm trying to say this in a very objective way. I'm not trying to judge them. Like I'm as healed as I can be when it comes to my relationship with them. I'm just recognizing the things that I needed. And I had to learn later in life how to give that to myself, rather than allow someone else to like hold that power or expect that from people who are not equipped to provide it, for whatever reason. It's more about having that self-awareness of like, this is what I need. Like, how do I give that to myself? What other resources can I turn to help me? And so, I think this is such a beautiful discussion of taking care of ourselves, like focusing on us after, for some people, after years of maybe almost a lifetime of traumatic experiences. And, and for you to finally get to that point where like, oh, wow, I get to do this thing where I get to know myself now. like who's Candice? And to see where you're at is amazing.
Well, and here's the thing too, is like we grow up so conditioned. We're not only conditioned by our family, we're conditioned by society. And then there's like, just layers of that even. And so most of us don't have a very strong personal identity. Yeah. And I think that we really start to develop this probably more so late 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe even longer. But we finally start to like pause and recognize, like, do I know myself? Mm-hmm. And do I know what my needs are? Do I care about myself? Or like, why do I keep doing these things that I know are not going to bring me joy? And so it becomes that next phase of our own evolution of like, okay, now that I've lived my life for everyone else, how do I actually live it for me?
Yes. That's $1 million question for some people who are so fortunate to arrive to that place of how do I live for me now? Well, awesome. Well, Candice, I want to shift gears here, if that's okay with you. I feel like we've talked extensively about your work and what, your love for what you do, and it really shows. And I'm just, I think it's so meaningful that you've taken all of that, all of your experiences and channeled it into the work that you do today. And so that being said, I know that you're a recent graduate of the Service to CEO program with the Rosie Network. It's one thing for us to obviously talk about this, and it's another thing to like build a sustainable business structure to make this possible. So tell me about that experience of being a business owner and for, with Reiki, like being a business owner, Reiki expert.
So business is always crazy. I'm just going to say that. Like, entrepreneurs are crazy in the mind anyway. Like, we have the ability to do 27,000 things and still have dinner on the table. Sometimes, no. It's like, so first, the Service to CEO, I cannot recommend that program like any bigger than I could scream it, because, it's one thing to have your business. And like, even though my background is working with small businesses, so I've been managing and doing all the things for small businesses for years, I still, when it came to practice with my own, I was still treating it almost like a hobby. I didn't have a vision, like what's my long-term vision for this business? What's my long-term goal? Like, where am I heading? I was only in the present, which you do want to be present, of course, but like you do also want that structure that, okay, like if I can get to this point, then I can open, like my long-term goal is to open a holistic wellness facility where people can come in and have, yoga, chiropractic care, meditation, all these different things, and really form it around the education and have like the stillness of it. But if I hadn't really sat down to do that work, I wouldn't have came to that outcome. Like I knew it was inside of me. Like I've said it for the last year, like, oh, this is what I want to do when my husband retires, because obviously I don't want a stationary place until we're stationary. But like going through the program, I was able to identify these holes that I had. And it was like, well, I've never really thought of even having investors. I've never really thought of, what is my brand? Like, I just get on there and talk. Like, and I'm still outlining like the brand stuff. But, for me, it really gave me the path of here's where I can go and the network. So I'm really big on networking anyway, especially like being in the field that I've been in for so long. Like networking is truly beneficial. Your network is your net worth. Like, never know who might know someone or who might have gone through this experience and who can mentor you. And so having that network and knowing that you're not alone in it, because entrepreneurship is hard. There's no way to sugarcoat that. Like you are trying to do all the things and most of the time working a job. And so that's where it just becomes that need for balance. And that Service to CEO gave me, a whole group of connections with people that were actually very similar interests. Like a lot of us were in the health field, some facet, or, and so it was really great to get to meet others that are in that journey. And then to get to really push yourself to do the things, because it's not like a super easy program. Like you're having to work in, but take that back. It depends on how much work you put in already. If you've laid the foundation, you probably breeze through it. But for me, I was like, oh, I don't even have like my motto or my, anything sayings going. So yeah, it was a great challenge. And it was really interesting to discover another layer of my business that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's like very fascinating, your background in managing other businesses to, now running your own. And it's like the difference between like teaching something versus practicing something. And it's like, wow, this is like two different specialties.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, I love that. And my husband and I have really appreciated the Rose Network throughout the years. And it's just so great that they continue to have the Service to CEO program. So I'm so glad that it was, very helpful for you and your business and everything. So yeah, well, Candice, I feel like I asked you everything I wanted to ask. I'm curious if there's anything I'm missing that you feel like I should be asking you before we start wrapping up here.
No, I mean, I know that beforehand we were talking about change, and we talk about this a lot, especially right now in this season of the year, because change is something that it stretches us and it really makes us like have to rethink things, and it takes a lot of effort. And that's why, things fall off after like a couple of weeks. And really, if you can focus on first identifying the change that you want, like your intuition will be screaming at you saying, you need to change this. If you just change this, things will get better. Or this could, opportunities come up when we change or we do something. It doesn't have to be a dramatic life change like we were talking about. It can just be something that you just know would make you feel better. And yet the way that our chemistry is, like our brain is built for autonomy. So it does not like change. It likes to be safe. It likes to predict. And so when you get to a place where you like know you want to make the change, it's just about, like you said earlier, that continual action and knowing like the reason, not only why you want the change, but what is telling you inside that this change would do for you. It's great to know why we want something, but when we have that deeper understanding of like, no, I really want this because I know that by doing this, this will make me feel this way. it helps it become, I wouldn't say easier. It's just easier to identify the steps forward. And then and then not giving up too soon. Like that's one of the things. And so I've worked for 3 different gyms in my career. And, seeing people come in at the beginning of the year, it's always so exciting.
Yeah.
But what we always strive to do was to encourage them to continue coming in. Like on the hard days, like Friday, easiest time to go to the gym. There.
Yeah.
Little insider tip. But like to encourage people to continue going, especially because it takes so long to see results from anything you do. It doesn't matter if it's business, physical, emotional, whatever. It just takes time. And when we're patient and we understand the deeper level of like why we're doing this, it makes it, you just continue to do it. It makes it easier for you to get there. And it's like, even when you feel like giving up and you're like, okay, I've gone to the gym like 18 times this month and I haven't seen anything move. It's moving. I promise. It's moving.
Yeah.
So keep going. Just keep doing the things. Like there is something about proximity as well. So proximity and availability. So if you are like, let's say you have your shoes are laid out at the end of your bed because you know that you're going to go running in the morning. Because in proximity, you can see it, you're more than likely going to take the action. So anything you can do, whether it's having things on your counter that are more healthy, they've actually proven in science that will help you maintain that healthy habit versus having a bunch of like junk food out where you can see it, where you're like, oh yeah, I'll just grab that. But proximity matters. So doing these little things that will keep you motivated, like put your journal by your bed if you know that you want to journal before the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. Having those visual reminders will also help you continue that change.
Yeah. I feel like we can have a whole other conversation about setting yourself up for success, like you said, having those visual reminders. And, for me, I have my gym bag like next to my bed because it's literally the first thing my husband and I do every morning. We go to the gym. It's just part of our morning routine. And like you're talking about the gym, because just this morning, a friend said to me, like, I've been going to this gym for like almost 2 years now. I have learned to like fall in love with the mundane task of just showing up. And I've learned to like not go hard every time I'm at the gym. I don't always go intense. Even today, I did like a lighter weight. We were doing snatches and they're like, oh, do it light. And it's funny because everyone else like did a little heavier. And I was like, I thought we were doing light. Like it was like, so I did it. But anyway, at the end of class, I was just kind of walking around and my friend was like, wow, Jen, like your muscles are starting to show. Like I could tell you've been working on yourself. And I was all like, I see myself every day. And I've kind of just like, I don't care to look in the mirror and weigh myself every day. I've just learned to love the process, love the journey. And so when someone makes a comment like that, it's like, oh, thanks. Like, I didn't even notice because I'm just like living it. And I think that's kind of like, like a tip also in setting yourself up for success is like enjoying the journey, like falling in love with the journey and the act of like, I think I've kind of learned that it's not really about a destination. It's more about a lifestyle choice. Like I choose to, like, if I know that part of my lifestyle is exercise, then I got to learn to pace myself. I got to learn to like not go intense every workout. I can scale down. I could just take a break and stretch on the side, but I'm still in the gym, So just like little things like that, I think can go a long way. And so I just had to share that because you talked about your your gym experience.
I love it. Well, and that's the thing is like sometimes people just need to hear it in that moment, like just to keep going. And that makes such a huge difference. And I think if we could also, and this is a whole other topic too, but if we could normalize that going to the gym, eating healthy doesn't have to look so intense. Like it can be walking on the treadmill. It can be having a healthier side versus like chips, like these little things that make a big impact on our mental wellness while we're doing these things. It's a whole other conversation that I could definitely have, like seeing the industry for so long, like it's changed a lot, which is good.
Yeah.
But definitely it's part of my heart and soul too.
Yeah. So. All right. So part 2, for next season.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Candice, I'm so thankful for our conversation today. Thank you so much for your time. Any final closing thoughts you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, and my favorite quote is, it's never too late to be what you might have been. And that goes for your emotional, spiritual, physical well-being. No matter where you're at in life right now, like you were saying, it's not the final destination. And even though it can sometimes feel as if it is, it's really, really not. And sometimes it does take that remembering that you are worthy, but you are worthy. And that anything that you're trying to get through, you can get through it because you are supported.
Yeah.
So just don't give up.
Mic drop. All right. We're going to stop there before I keep talking. So Candice, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for joining us here on Holding Down the Fort.
Well, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Hey, this is your host, Jen Amos. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of Holding Down the Fort by US VetWealth. Visit holdingdownthefortpodcast.com to access the full show notes of this episode, including resources mentioned and bonus content. Once again, that's holdingdownthefortpodcast.com. Lastly, stay after this outro music for something a little extra. Thanks again and chat soon. Bye for now. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me here in the post commentary. I got to come up with a name for this. I'm going to call it like post reflection or something, like welcome to the, I don't know. If anyone comes up with something creative, just let me know. I'm building this as I go, as I always do with everything. And I just want to reflect on the question that I asked you all at the beginning. I hope that you will reflect with me. The question was, reflecting on past traumas, how have you navigated your path to healing, and what strategies have you found most effective? So I'll share for me, reflecting on past traumas and how I've navigated my path to healing. I will say that the strategies that I have found most effective have varied throughout the years. On a spiritual standpoint, I have always been a firm believer of Jesus Christ. I firmly believe that he had died for my sins so that I can have a direct relationship with my Heavenly Father. And the way that I continue to live in joy and peace and purpose is through Bible study and serving at my church. So let me just start by that. My foundation begins with my faith in regards to my path to healing and all the things. Additionally, when I think about what strategies I have used, once again, it's varied a lot. It's been a mix of therapy. It's been a mix of being in community with people, having creative outlets like podcasting. And most of all, I think the greatest strategy is, it starts with yourself and saying, I think I have a problem, to, okay, I have a problem and I need help. I think it to the very basic level, it starts there. It starts with that self-awareness that maybe something isn't right and that you might need help, and to be willing to seek out that help. So that's my answer to that question. And so let me ask it again for you, the listener, to reflect on. Reflecting on past traumas, how have you navigated your path to healing, and what strategies have you found most effective? Would love to hear it. Let us know by reaching out to us. Our contact information is in the show notes of this episode in your preferred podcasting platform. Or, of course, you can find us on our website, holdingdownthefortpodcast.com. You can do a search of Candice's episode 190, which you can type into the search bar on our website on the top right and get a hold of us in that way. Otherwise, I want to thank you all so much for listening. I hope you got, heartwarming feeling from this conversation today. And I look forward to chatting with you all again this following Thursday. Bye for now.